What is easier to learn, the backflip or the front flip? What flip is best, backflip or front flip? The debate in the internet world continues. The battle rages on, and we must find out. So we're going to compare these two tricks based on a few metrics to see which one comes out on top. Which flip is easier to learn or to master? Which flip is more practical? Which flip is cooler or more dangerous? I'm going to have to put on my flipping science cap to figure this out. So let's begin this flipping battle, or this science of flipping. Wait, the flipping battle of science! So first, let's answer the question. What is easier to learn, the backflip or the front flip? To determine this, we must first decide our learning method. I'm going to come at it from two different angles, the backyard huck approach and the gymnastics approach. And so one is a structured, safe environment for learning with a coach. Gymnastics, the backyard hucking, is where you just go out on your own and try and figure it out. I'm going to do that one first because that's how I learned these flips myself, as I just threw an old mattress in my backyard and just started hucking my body onto it to see what would happen. While we're on the subject of flips, I wanted to take a quick minute to tell you about this awesome mobile game all about flips called Flip Runner by Motion Volt Games. In this game, you control your character to do epic jumps and flips over roofs and gaps, and the ragdoll physics in this game are hilarious. So even if you miss the mark, it's hard to be disappointed because watching your character bounce, splat, and hit the ground is just as entertaining. The mechanics of this game inspire me to go out and try flips on my own and to experiment and be creative. And that's what's fun about this game, is you can actually be creative in the tricks you do, how you do it, how you land them, just to see what I can accomplish or to see the outcome of the hilarious stunts I can perform. To get some extra feedback, I even played it with my kids to get their reaction on this game.
Landing.
You gotta land on your back. What the? How did he land this? You can get this. Land it. Land it. As you progress through the game, you'll unlock new characters, levels, and tricks to give you something to work toward. This game is free to play, so go check out Flip Runner for yourself by clicking on the link in the description, where you can download it for both Android and iOS. Okay, so back to telling you about my experience learning the backflip and front flip in my backyard on my mattress, hucking them onto the mattress. What I found was initially it was much easier to start learning the front flip because it was easier to get over my head. I found our bodies just naturally want to fold over forward versus backwards, so it's much easier to get over your head doing a front flip, which makes them less scary because that's the scariest part of doing any trick, is the fear that you're going to land on your head. The backflip, on the other hand, was much harder for me to first start learning and committing to because I just couldn't get over my head. So I started out by actually going over my shoulder, doing what we call a hack flip. It's kind of like an off-axis backflip, but you're going over your shoulder, so if you don't make it all the way around, you're at least not landing directly on your head. Eventually, I could land the front flip, landing in a low crouch on my feet by just running full speed and hucking my body and trying to get around as fast as I could. It was not pretty, and it hurt my feet every time I did it. Whereas the backflip took a bit longer to learn, and eventually my first time landing it was having to do it off of a 4-foot box. And it took even longer, maybe like 6 months to a year, to actually be able to land it on flat ground. So overall, for learning the backflip and front flip the way I had learned it, the front flip was definitely easier, but once I did learn how to backflip, it actually became easier to throw a standing backflip anywhere with less effort than it did to do a standing front flip or any type of front flip. But let's find out from a gymnast perspective which one was easier to learn. I'm gonna go ask my friend Maya Lowry, who's a gymnast, to find out what her experience was with these flips. So let's go. Okay, now I'm here at Maya's place, and we're going to find out from, oh, there's Maya. We're going to find out from Maya because she's a gymnast and parkour athlete, so she'll have a unique perspective on what it's like, what's easier to learn, and what's easier to master, the front flip or the back flip. Over to you, Maya.
Well, if you were to ask me, I would say the front tuck is always the easier one to send first. Mentally, it's not as scary to go forwards. It's always that backwards feeling, not being able to see where you're going. But the back tuck is almost always easier to land.
And you're a coach now, so what's your experience with teaching kids the back flip and front flip?
Typically, I would say my students are more than likely to at least throw a back tuck
as far as like with maybe a tumbling pass. So like a round off back handspring back tuck is usually like the first thing that they would throw. Typically they're pretty comfortable with that. I do have a couple students who are fearful of going backwards and would much rather do front tucks only, and have actually been able to consistently land front tucks completely on a spring floor now as well. So sometimes it just depends on the athlete. I would say this generation, I usually run into more students that are a little bit more fearful of going backwards and less fearful of the front motion. So that's a bit different from when I was an athlete and learning these things. I would definitely say it was like the reverse. But yeah, nowadays I see more front tucks than I do back tucks. But definitely the skills that they would need more is the back tuck first.
So it sounds like from Maya's perspective, it's similar to the backyard huck method, which is the front flip's easier, less scary to start learning, but the back flip's definitely easier to get good at and master. And Maya, what's your final say? Which flip is best?
Back tuck!
Woohoo! Okay, so that's a point for the back tuck. Thanks for joining me. You can find Maya on Instagram at
Maya.Noel, MAYAH.Noel. It'll pop up.
Sweet. Okay, next category. Which flip is more dangerous? Now they're both dangerous. Any flip where you're inverting yourself and leaping off the ground is going to be dangerous. But I'm gonna just go with my gut here. And I'm gonna say I think the backflip is more dangerous. And the reason why is because, like we talked about before on which one's easier to do, the backflip is just much harder to initially figure out how to get around past your head, and even more difficult to bail out of if you do it wrong, or if your feet slip, or if something goes wrong. I've seen way more videos of people necking the ground doing a backflip than I have with a front flip. And even when people do mess up a front flip at, it's normally just to the back, but I've seen so many people land on their head doing a backflip. So honestly, I'm gonna be less scientific about this one and just say, I think the backflip is dangerous. Let me know if you agree with that though. This is just me going off my anecdotal experiences and what I see happening on videos on the internet, because we know we can always trust the internet. Also keep in mind you have the rollouts for these moves, especially if you're doing the flip off of height. If you're doing a front flip, you need to do a forward rollout, back flip, backwards roll. And even with the roll themselves, the forward roll is less dangerous than the backwards roll. Even when I've done really high back flips, I've done back rolls where I hit the back of my head on the ground as I'm doing the roll because of the impact, whereas I've never hit my head doing a forward roll out of any height of front flip. So there's another anecdotal reason that the front flip is safer than the back flip. Which one is cooler? Obviously, they can be cool in different contexts, but I personally, because it's been the thing I've always wanted to learn my whole life, as I would watch The Matrix and Spider-Man, it was always the backflip layout. Just seeing that beautiful form of diving backwards and doing a flip was just always the coolest looking thing to me. So as cool as front flips are, and as cool as you can do all sorts of crazy things with front flips, there's always going to be a place in my heart for the back flip because of how cool it looks. All right, on to which flip is more practical. So who knows who Dom Tomaso or Dom Tomato is? If you're following me, I hope you know who he is. He's one of the craziest parkour guys out there doing some nutty moves, especially nutty front flips. And I'm gonna use him as my exhibit A of why the front flip is more practical than the back flip. This goes back to our body mechanics of the front flip just being more natural for our bodies to initially do and roll out of in a safe way. In general, we're always running forward, so it makes sense that doing the front flip is going to be the most practical because it's the most similar with the momentum of running forward in the ways that we naturally move. And you can see Dom doing this. He's always doing these huge, massive, running, diving front flips and then rolling out of it and coming away safely. And I would say even doing the front flip may make doing high drops more effective than just doing a straight dropping landing. And the reason why is because the rotation of the front flip is actually going to allow you to more easily transition into the roll on the ground. When you're just doing a straight drop, you have to force your body to get that forward momentum to go into the roll to disperse that impact. Whereas when you're already flipping forward, as long as you land it correctly, you're going to be able to roll more efficiently out of that drop, dispersing the impact even better. That's not to say that doing really high front flips isn't dangerous, because if you under rotate or over rotate, you can still really wreck yourself. I have seen some people do some massive backflips, and it's always really cool to see huge backflips, but you just don't see them as often because they're more dangerous and they're harder to land smoothly, where you're not just doing a sloppy roll out of it or landing hard. Now, one instance where the backflip could be useful if you're a superhero is running up the wall and doing a backflip, because it's super cool and it's a cool way to run away from something, go up a wall and either go over it or dodge bullets. You know, we're talking superhero physics here. I don't know that any of this would work in the real world, but if you're designing an action scene, that's how you could incorporate the backflip to seem like a practical action move. All right, now which flip is more fun to do? Again, this is a subjective question, so I'm going to answer it from my own personal preference. And I was really thinking about it and struggling to decide on which one was more fun, because I realized they're each really fun in their own right, and especially in different contexts. Going off a wall, the backflip by far is one of my favorite tricks, because that's what inspired me to want to learn parkour, learn flips in the first place, was to be able to run up a wall and do a backflip. Backflip has a special place in my heart when it comes to on a wall. When it comes to flat ground, it's kind of a toss-up. I enjoy standing Websters, standing front flips, standing backflips. They're all just wonderful to do. When it comes to doing it off height or off ledges, I tend to lean towards front flips. They just feel more natural to do and more enjoyable on my body, less impact. And so, I don't know, in all the different ways to look at it, I'm going to have to say this one is a tie between the backflip and the front flip, in that they are equally fun to do depending on the context in which you're doing them. So there you have it. The results are in. Using our very scientifically rigorous method of conducting this experiment, we've concluded that the winner is the front flip. Obviously, there's way more metrics we could bring into this, so let me know in the comments which categories I left out on how we could have ranked these flips, and if you think my science was wrong anywhere, if you disagree with my final conclusion. So, otherwise, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.